Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. I'm really excited about today's topic. We're looking at this new AI model, QwQ-32B, and we've got some articles, some technical explanations. So we're going to try to get into the nuts and bolts of what it can do,
Yeah,
and also what it means for, well, I guess all of us, right?
absolutely. Yeah. This AI, I mean, it's designed to be a super reasoner.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like it's tackling math problems, it can code,
Uh-huh.
it can handle these really complex problems. So,
So maybe it can even beat us at our own game. Who knows?
right, we're gonna find out.
Okay, well, I'm ready to dive in.
Let's do it.
So first of all, where did this brainy AI come from?
So QwQ-32B, it was developed by the Qwen team over at Alibaba Cloud.
Okay.
And it's actually, it builds on their previous model, Q2.5, but this one is a big step up.
How so?
Well, this one's packing 32 billion parameters.
32 billion. Okay, so that sounds like a lot.
It is a lot, yeah.
I'm not an AI expert, so what does that actually mean, like
Sure.
in terms of what it can do?
So you can think of parameters as like the connections in the AI's neural network, right?
Okay.
So the more parameters it has, the more complex that network is. And that means it can understand information in a much more nuanced way.
Oh, I see.
But it's not just about size with this
Yeah.
one.
Oh,
They also incorporated a really unique training method, something called reinforcement learning.
Reinforcement learning. I feel like I've heard that before. Is that like how they train those game playing AIs?
Exactly, yeah.
Like AlphaGo and all that?
Yeah, so instead of just feeding it tons and tons of data, right?
Right.
They actually set up this system where the AI gets rewards for solving problems correctly.
Huh, interesting.
So it's like it learns through trial and error, and it keeps getting better and better, optimizing its strategies to get those rewards.
So it's almost like it's learning by doing,
Yeah.
right? Like it's
Yes.
figuring things out on its own.
Yeah, and this is actually a big departure from the traditional way of training AI, like with supervised learning.
Right, where you just kind of feed it labeled data and it learns patterns.
Exactly. But reinforcement learning, it's more about setting goals
Okay.
and then letting the AI figure out like the best way to achieve those goals on its own.
So the Qwen team, they're like setting up these reward systems, these goals, and then they're kind of like unleashing QwQ-32B to figure it out.
Exactly.
That's really cool.
It is. It makes it really good at things that require complex problem solving, like strategic thinking.
Okay, so how do we actually know if it's, living up to all the hype?
That's where the benchmarks come in. They've really put it through its paces.
Okay.
They've tested it against some of the top AI models out there, including DeepSeek R1.
Okay, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, and that one is huge. It's got like 671 billion parameters.
Wow, that's like David versus Goliath.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
So how did little QwQ-32B hold up?
It actually did surprisingly well. It achieved comparable performance, even better in some cases.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
I know, right?
Okay, so what were some of the tests? Like, what did they actually have it do?
Sure. So one of the tests was it's called GPQA. It's a test of scientific reasoning,
Okay.
and it's like a graduate level.
Wow.
Pretty tough stuff. And QwQ-32B scored a 65.2% accuracy on that.
That's pretty good.
It is, yeah. And then they threw some math challenges at it, like Math 500.
Right.
It got a 90.6% on that. And then they even had it try AIM.
Amy, that's like a...
That's a really hard math competition.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that. Like, some of the smartest kids take that one.
Exactly, yeah. And it got a 50% on that.
Wow.
Which is actually really impressive.
So this AI could, like, tutor me in math, maybe?
It might be able to. It's pretty good.
Okay, so math and science, what about coding? Can it write code?
Oh yeah, it can code too. It did really well on Live Code Bench.
Okay.
Which is this benchmark that tests, can it actually generate functional code from instructions?
Right.
And it had a 50% success rate.
Huh.
Which is pretty good for an AI.
Yeah, I mean, I can't write code at all.
Right.
So 50%, that's way better than me.
Exactly. And this could be really useful for developers, right?
Yeah, I could see that.
Like maybe it can help them automate some of the boring stuff.
Like debugging and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Or even, come up with new code like more efficiently.
That's really cool. So it sounds like from these benchmarks, at least this QwQ-32B it's a pretty versatile AI. It can do a lot.
Yeah, it can. It really can.
And our sources also mentioned that it can process a ton of information.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's got this huge context length.
Right, like 131,072 tokens.
Yeah, that's a lot, to put that into perspective, that's like a 300-page book.
So it can like read and understand a whole textbook in one go.
Basically, yeah.
That's wild.
I know, it's crazy how much it can process.
How does that compare to other AI models out there?
So it's on the higher end. There are some models that have even bigger context lengths.
Right.
Like Google's Gemini 2.0, that one has a massive 2 million token capacity.
2 million. Okay.
Yeah, but, bigger isn't always better, right?
Right.
It's not just about how much information it can hold. It's about how it uses that information to reason and solve problems.
Right, so it's not just a memory bank, it's actually using that information.
Exactly.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, and even with 131,072 tokens, I mean, it can handle some really complex tasks.
Mm-hmm.
Things that, need a lot of information, like analyzing financial data or legal documents, or even, like really dense scientific research papers.
So it's like having like a super-powered research assistant, basically.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's awesome.
It is, and there's one more thing I wanted to touch on. It's about its agentic capabilities.
The agentic capabilities, what does that even mean?
So that basically refers to the AI's ability to interact with its environment,
Okay.
It can learn from feedback. It can change its actions based on what happens around it.
So it's not just like passively processing information, it's actually engaging with the world.
Yeah, exactly. It's adapting, it's learning.
So it's almost like it's learning and adapting in real time.
In a way, yeah, you can think of it like that.
That's crazy.
I know, right?
So it's not just a static problem solver. It's more like a dynamic learner, like constantly evolving.
Exactly. Yeah, it's always getting better, always learning.
This is mind-blowing stuff.
It really is.
But I got to ask, what does this all mean for our listeners?
That's a great question.
Why should they care about this new AI?
Yeah, well, that's something we can dive into a little bit deeper after a quick break.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so we've talked about all the amazing things that QwQ-32B can do.
Mm-hmm.
But let's get down to the practical stuff.
Right.
How could this AI actually impact our listeners' lives?
Well, the potential applications here they're really vast.
Yeah, I bet.
I mean, I think it's safe to say that this kind of AI, it's going to reshape a lot of different fields.
Okay, so let's get specific. Where do you see it making the biggest difference?
One area that comes to mind right away is data analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine feeding QwQ-32B these huge data sets, financial markets, scientific research, even social trends, anything you can think of.
And it could just sift through all that and find hidden patterns, stuff that we might miss.
Exactly. Yeah, it could generate these really insightful reports. It could accelerate research.
So instead of having a whole team of analysts poring over spreadsheets,
right,
you could just have QwQ-32B do it.
It could help us understand these complex systems in ways that we just couldn't do before.
That's pretty amazing.
It is. It really is.
What about software development? We talked about it can code.
Yeah.
Could it actually replace programmers?
I don't think it's going to replace programmers entirely anytime soon.
Okay.
But I do think it can help them a lot. It could assist with those more tedious tasks.
Yeah, debugging. I hate debugging.
Exactly, yeah. Or finding vulnerabilities in the code, or even, generating new code from a set of instructions.
Well, it would free up programmers to focus on the more creative stuff.
Right, the more high-level thinking.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, so it's really about collaboration,
Humans and AI working together.
Exactly, using each other's strengths.
Okay, so we've talked about data analysis, software development. What other fields could be revolutionized by this kind of AI?
Well, I mean, you can really apply it to almost anything. Healthcare is a big one.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine QwQ-32B analyzing patient data, helping doctors make diagnoses.
Right, or even personalized treatment plans.
Yeah, exactly. It could really personalize medicine in a way that, we haven't seen before.
That's huge.
It is. And what about other industries manufacturing, transportation,
Yeah,
finance. I mean, the possibilities are really endless.
so in manufacturing, it could like optimize production, maybe predict when machines are going to break down.
Yeah, yeah, improve quality control, all sorts of things.
And in transportation, it could like help with traffic flow or like routing delivery trucks.
Right, optimizing logistics, making everything more efficient.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then in finance, it could analyze market trends, assess risks, help people make smarter investments.
Okay, so it sounds like um, this AI could really have a positive impact on like a lot of different areas.
I think so, yeah, I really do.
But, there's always two sides to every coin, right? Like,
Right.
are there any potential downsides that we should be thinking about?
That's a really important point, like any technology, especially a powerful one like this, there are potential risks.
Yeah.
And one of the big concerns is job displacement.
Right. Like if AI can do all this stuff,
Hmm.
then, what happens to the people who used to do those jobs?
Right. And as AI gets even more sophisticated, it's likely that it's going to automate more and more tasks that, humans currently do.
So it's not like it's going to happen overnight, but
Yeah.
it's something we need to start thinking about now.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to be prepared. We need to think about like upskilling, retraining programs,
Yeah.
helping people adapt to these changes.
So it's not just about like developing the technology, it's about like developing like a society that can handle it.
Hmm. Right, exactly. And making sure that, the benefits of AI, they're shared by everyone.
Okay, so job displacement is a big one. What other risks are there?
Another one that's really important is bias.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah, these AI models, they're trained on data.
Mm-hmm.
And if that data is biased,
Then the AI is going to be biased.
exactly, it can inherit those biases. It can even amplify them.
And that could lead to like some really unfair outcomes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in areas like hiring or lending.
Or even like the justice system, right?
Exactly. So we need to be really careful about the data that we use to train these models.
So it needs to be like representative. It needs to be fair.
Yeah, and we also need to have like transparency.
Transparency in how the AI is being developed.
Yeah, and accountability. Like we need to understand how these models are making decisions
Mm-hmm.
and what kind of safeguards are in place to prevent them from being misused.
So it's not just on the developers. It's kind of like a responsibility for everyone, right? Like to make sure that this technology is used ethically.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a conversation that we all need to be having.
Okay, so we've talked about, the big picture, the impact on industries, on society.
Mhm.
But what about like individuals? Like
Yeah.
how could AI like QwQ-32B change our everyday lives?
Well, in some ways, I think it already is.
Yeah.
I mean, we're interacting with AI all the time now, with voice assistants, personalized recommendations.
Right, and those little chatbots that pop up on websites.
Exactly, yeah. And as these models get more advanced, like QwQ-32B,
Yeah.
they're just going to become more integrated into our lives.
So what could that look like in the future?
Well, imagine like having an AI assistant that can help you manage your schedule,
Okay.
learn new skills, stay up to date on current events.
Or even like give you creative ideas.
Yeah, exactly, like a brainstorming partner.
That would be pretty cool.
It would be, and it makes you wonder, like, as AI gets more and more advanced,
Yeah.
will it ever, like, surpass human intelligence?
That's the big question, right? Like
Mhm.
artificial general intelligence, AGI.
Yeah, AGI, it's something that people have been talking about for decades.
Like an AI that's as smart as a human or even smarter.
Right, and maybe even conscious.
Yeah, it's a little bit scary, but also kind of exciting.
I know, it's a really fascinating topic.
It really makes you think about like what it means to be human.
It does, it really does.
Okay, well, before we go too far down that rabbit hole, let's bring it back to QwQ-32B.
Right.
We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From its reasoning abilities to its potential applications to all the ethical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So before we wrap up, let's just make sure that our listeners like really understand what makes this AI so special.
Yeah, good idea. Let's do a quick recap.
Okay, so QwQ-32B, it's this 32 billion parameter AI model, right?
Yep. Developed by the Qwen team at Alibaba Cloud.
And it's really good at reasoning, especially with math, coding, and complex problem solving.
Yeah, it's a real problem solver.
And that's because of this unique way that they trained it with reinforcement learning.
Right. They basically taught it to learn by doing and by getting rewarded for its successes.
Yeah, it's almost like training a dog, right?
Kinda, yeah, except that this dog can solve differential equations.
Right, exactly.
And we also talked about its huge context length, 131,072 tokens. That's like a whole book.
Yeah, it can process so much information.
It can. It's really impressive.
And then there's the agentic capabilities, which means it can like interact with its environment, learn from feedback.
Yeah, it's not just a static program. It's constantly adapting, constantly learning.
So putting all this together, it sounds like QwQ-32B has the potential to like really change the world.
I think so, yeah. It could revolutionize a lot of industries. It could make our lives easier, more efficient.
But we also have to be mindful of the risks, like job displacement, bias,
Yeah.
and make sure that it's developed responsibly.
Exactly. We need to be having these conversations now so that we can shape the future of AI in a positive way.
Well said. I think that's a great note to end on. It really is amazing to think about, just how far AI has come and where it's going from here.
Yeah, for sure.
Like if QwQ-32B can already do all this incredible stuff,
Right.
what's next? What are you most excited about, like in the world of AI research right now?
Well, one thing that I'm really interested in is the development of AI that can, like, really understand natural language.
Okay.
Like, even better than what we have now.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen like ChatGPT, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
It is. It's very impressive, but I think we're still just scratching the surface.
Okay, so what do you see happening? Like what's the next level?
Imagine an AI that can, like, not only hold a conversation, but actually understand things like humor, sarcasm, even, like, emotional subtext.
So it'd be more like talking to a real person.
Yeah, exactly. Like a truly intelligent being, one that gets, not just the words, but the meaning behind them.
That would be incredible.
It would be. And this goes beyond just like conversation.
Really?
Think about AI that can like write novels, compose music,
Oh, wow.
create art, even like help us understand complex scientific concepts.
So it's not just like a tool, it's like a collaborator, a partner.
Exactly, yeah. And I think that's where it's really going.
That's really exciting, but it also makes me wonder, like with AI becoming so advanced, is there a risk that it could become like too powerful,
Yeah, that's a valid concern.
like too autonomous, like out of control?
Right, and that's why it's so important to, to prioritize safety as we develop these systems,
Mm-hmm.
to build in control mechanisms, to ensure that these AI, they stay aligned with human values and goals.
Right. So we don't want to create something that we can't control.
Exactly, and that's why, things like open collaboration and transparency are so crucial.
Okay, Fee, we need to be having these conversations.
We do.
We need to involve a lot of different perspectives
Yes, I
and make sure that we're building a future where AI is serving humanity, not the other way around.
Exactly.
Well said. So we've talked about QwQ-32B. We've talked about the future of AI.
Mm,
It's clear that this technology is evolving really fast,
it is.
and I think it's up to all of us to stay informed,
Absolutely.
to be part of the conversation.
Yeah, to think critically about the choices that we're making today.
Because those choices are going to shape, the future of AI and the future of humanity.
They really will.
Well, on that note, that's going to do it for today's deep dive.
It's been a great conversation.
I really enjoyed it. Thanks for joining me and sharing your insights.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, we hope you learned something new today, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.